Build your own AI secretary in Google Sheets that can keep track of your KPIs, automatically send you voice notes so that you can stay updated on the go. Hi, my name is Guna. So this is a short conceptual description on how you can set up this sort of workflow, AI workflow in Google Sheets. So before going into the details, let me just show you the sample output from this system.
Hey boss, here's today's quick update. We had a fantastic day today. Production reached 650 kilograms, exceeding our daily target of 500 kilogram. Sales were also amazing at $13,500 USD, exceeding our target of $12,000 USD by over 12%, which is great. On the safety front, we did have one OSHA incident reported. A slip and fall, thankfully with no injury.
So that is one sample. Let's look at another one.
Hey boss, here is today's quick update. From a disposal drum. We've argued by over 30%, so we definitely need to look into why that happened. There was one OSHA incident reported. An oil leak from a disposal drum. We've already contacted the contractor, and they're coming in first thing tomorrow to clean it up.
So this is the concept. You have your Google Sheets that is tracking your KPIs, and then the information is sent to Google's Gemini AI to create that voice summaries. Let's look at the concepts on how we can get this up and running. So the starting point is Google Sheets, where the data is input by your staff or your employees or your teammates. And in this case, there's the first automation is when the data is not input on time, it creates an automated reminder email to the particular staff to update the information. If the information is updated on time, then it triggers the other workflow, which is pick the important KPIs, and then it will send to Google's Gemini to either create a simple summary or even do some sort of analysis. And then it takes the output from this and then it creates a voice note from there. And finally, this voice note is emailed to the boss or anybody else. Okay. So the fundamentals here is Google Sheets. Okay. And then, of course, Gmail, which is we are all quite familiar with. And we are triggering two additional functions here. Okay. Two additional Google Cloud functions, which is generative language API, where the data is sent to Gemini AI model to do a simple analysis or summary, and then after that this information is collected and then it is sent to another Google function, which is Google Cloud Text to Speech API. Okay, so in order for us to execute this workflow, we'll be using app script, okay, which takes the data, which sends to Google's cloud functions, and then it triggers the other functions, and then finally we get the email. Okay, so there is two. Before going into the details, let me just kind of give an idea here. I am not a coder, okay, and in this case, in order for us to execute all these functions, we'll be using AppScript, which is a low-code JavaScript platform. So technically, you have to key in the codes or the functions in JavaScript format, and then it executes the function. But in this case, I used Google's Gemini to come up with the entire function, and this entire workflow it has around 250 plus lines of code. Okay, so there is two primary functions in AppScript. One is to check and send reminder, which is this one, and then the other one is it's going to take the data, create a summary, create a voice note, and then send the voice note through Gmail. Okay, so we look at some of the logic part here so that you'll get a better understanding. So the first function gets triggered at 4 p.m. and the second function gets triggered at 6 p.m. So the first function, all it does is it checks for the data. If the data is not there, it's going to send a reminder. That's all. Okay. And the second function, what it does is it's again going to check for the data. If there's no data, it's going to stop the function because we don't want to waste Google Cloud's resources to initiate the function and then there's no data, right? So it stops the function. Again, the same logic is if even there is a case of missing information, that means you got five KPIs you want to keep track of, and you only got like two data, so you don't want to waste again Google's resources, right? So you stop the function. And then the best case scenario, when all the information is there, the data is gathered, and then it is sent to Gemini API, and then after that it is sent to Google Cloud text to speech API, and the output, which is a voice note, is again attached to email and then sent to the person that is supposed to receive it. Okay, so this is the concept behind it, and these are the entire sort of workflow behind it. And I said just now I did not know how to code, so okay, let's just quickly look into how I managed to came up with this entire code stack. So it actually started with me trying to, I mean, it wasn't really exactly this sort of function that I had in mind. I just wanted to have, like, I got data. I want to get an update. Okay, and then additional functions like to send a reminder. All this was actually suggested to me by Google's Gemini AI. Okay, so there was a discussion, and then I said what I wanted, and then he got me back saying that okay, this is what we can do. This is the functions that we can use, and then the code. Okay, so in total for this particular case, we have seven total functions, which is two primary functions and then five supporting functions. And again, okay, I have to highlight this. I didn't understand what and how in the beginning, so I had to ask Gemini to explain to me all the concepts. So let's look at that part. Okay, so here's the thing. It was a long discussion. Okay, you can see that it's a very long discussion. Okay, let me just start from the early part. Okay, so the initial part is where I wanted to know what things can be done, and then Gemini kind of, in this case, let me also highlight that we're using 2.5 Pro. Okay, which is the good model for coding, right? So there was a lot of discussion, back and forth discussion, and finally I told Gemini that what I this is what I want to do exactly, and then it kind of come up with the process flow. From the process flow, the detail tools and the steps that are needed to initiate the function, and the best part is all the codes as well. Okay, so initially you see that it kind of explain, okay, in order for you to do this function, let's say function primary function number one, this is the code, this is the configuration, this is the code you have to have. And then after that you initiate primary function number two, helper function number one and two. But then for me this was actually quite confusing, because again I don't know how to code, and I'm not familiar with JavaScript. So I told Gemini, give me an output that I can just copy and paste in AppScript, and then it should run. Okay, so that happened here, somewhere along here. Okay, so when I said that, it kind of opened up a canvas, and the entire code stack, the full code stack according to the flow was there, and you can see that it's around 357 lines here. But of course, this includes all your remarks and all that. I would say probably the actual functions or code is probably around 250. So what I did was I copied this entire code, okay, and then I pasted in my app script. Okay, so obviously once you do this, you also need to configure the Google Cloud part, because this app script code, it calls Google Cloud functions. So we have to have the connection right. Again, there was also this part was also discussed with Google, and then he kind of told me how to do it. So in the end of the day, okay, I set up my Google Cloud project, okay, and then we have to enable these two APIs, okay, uh, generative language API, which is this one. You enable the API, and then of course the other one is cloud text to speech API. So these are the two Google Cloud functions that gets called from Google Sheets by AppScript. Okay. So in order for you to call these functions, you have to create the API key and all that. So get it done. Paste the API key here. This is the sample key, and then you also need to update these two details. Okay, the who is the reminder email that will be sent to, and then who is going to receive the voice note. So once I do that, and then of course, I tested. and then I set the triggers. Okay, two functions. Okay, you just need to set the trigger for two functions. The first function is going to run at, it's going to be time driven, it's going to be day timer. Okay, so this one runs at 4 p.m. Okay, and then we save the function. So you also do the same thing for function number two, and then it works just like that. So this entire thing, this entire code was given to me by Google Gemini 2.5 Pro. I don't know how to code. I didn't know how to, in the initial stage, obviously, I didn't understand what was what. But then again, obviously, I wanted to understand more. So I did a lot of discussion back and forth. It explained to me what function does what are the safety sort of guardrails that is implemented here, what's the reminders, what sort of other functions, the sub functions, and all that. So all this was explained to me by Google Gemini 2.5 Pro. So you see the idea, right? Okay, so we have this, and then we have this output. Okay, and in between to get it done, this is what is needed. Okay, that's about it for the idea, the concept, and the illustration. If you think this is something that you want to build yourself, you can check out the details in my website, agenticsolutions.net. Look for General Secretary Agent. So I provided the basic steps, all the tools that you need to kind of implement same function. This is assuming you know the basics like Google Cloud basics and all that. But if you're not familiar and you want to learn the basics, you can actually check out my Udemy course as well. So we're looking at the basics on Google Cloud Platform, on AppScript, and how you can call additional functions from Google Sheets, etc. So everything will be covered there. And also, I will also provide the JavaScript code that is used in my case. So in this case, if you look at this entire code stack, right, 350 plus lines of code. Okay, it will be provided as part of the course. And what you can do is you can copy this code, and you can paste it in your app script. And then if you use the same similar sort of title and the column headers and all that, and once you change your API key, you can run it just like that to test it, right? And then the best part is you can also use the same code and create variations. So how you do that is you take that code which is in a text file, you will upload here in Gemini 2.5 Pro, and then you ask Gemini to, this is the base code and this is the functions that is available. Okay. And in here you can also ask Gemini to, explain all the whole thing. Okay, what is the functions, what each function does, and if I want to change something, how I can do that and all that. So in this case, you can tell Gemini this is the base function, and then you can change your KPI database to suit your own needs. Okay, maybe there's production one, production two, there's sales one, sales two, remarks one, remarks two, and all that. And in the easier way is probably you can just screenshot the entire thing, which also shows your sheet name and your tab name, and then you can paste in Gemini the JPEG file or the image file and say that that's the original code, and this is my actual sheets sort of use case. Revise the code to reflect this, and in almost all the cases that I've tested, it works. So Gemini 2.5 is that good. Okay, and also technically in this case, as long as you stick to all the other functions, right, there's not many to be changed, but you'll get idea on how you can create your own variations. So this part is looked in detail in my course as well. Yeah, so and also how you can create different use cases, you can test the concept, etc. And yeah, I can probably highlight this again. You don't need coding language to do this. Okay, although this has a lot of codes in the application in your app script use case, but you don't need to know coding. So that's the power of AI. Gemini AI can help you as long as you explain the concepts and what you want, right? It's going to come up with a code that you can just copy and paste in AppScript, and then you can run it. So, and the moment you know this concept on how to do it, then I would say it literally opens up for any use case, right? Okay, because Google Workspace is it has a lot of tools, and if you can interlink all the different tools with different functions, different workflows, the possibilities are quite amazing if you think about it. Okay, so yeah, that's about it. If you think this sort of topics is something that you're interested, you can follow me. I'm also exploring 5 or 6 other use cases that I already have in mind, and then potentially more as well. Thank you.